what's going on? It's the Petrol List.
Hey, what's going on? It's your boy Dalton from the Petrol List, and welcome to the Monday video. If you like and subscribe and all that kind of crap, this is the video that is guaranteed during the week. Guarantee a Monday video. If I publish something later on in the week, it's because it's time sensitive or I was inspired to do so. The Monday one is the one that you get rain, snow, or shine. All right, let's get into it. Of course, this week I got to talk about the Mexican Grand Prix. I'm going to go through what I thought were significant factors or events that happened in the race, and then I'll drill into the things that I find, particularly important or interesting. So let's get into it. Mexican Grand Prix. Perez crashes into Leclerc and DNFs the car. I'll get into that a little bit more later, but that was super sad to see. Lewis Hamilton, P2, great result, and he had the fastest lap on 42 lap old tires, 42 lap old mediums. That's pretty impressive to show what the Mercedes and what Hamilton had at the end of the race, left in the gas tank. Norris, still no GP win. Ricciardo stunned with a P7 in an AlphaTauri. That is quite a result for him.
Ricciardo goes wheel to wheel with Lewis Hamilton. Ricciardo will stay ahead of the 7-time world champion into turn 5, but Hamilton getting on the power, trying to keep all four wheels on the road.
Happy for him. Tsunoda kind of canceled himself from the race, unfortunately. That would have been both AlphaTauris in the points. George, I jokingly say George was nowhere to be found. I think he got P6. No. Yes, Russell got P6. So, decent result. Piastri is one of my favorite young drivers, and he got P8 right behind his Australian, countryman. Magnussen, oh gosh, his car essentially fell apart. He was turning right and the car just went left in a very violent manner. That's disconcerting. It's one thing to have driver error and you crash your car and you're like, oh, I can do better next time, or you watch the films and you're like, oh, if I wouldn't have hit that curbing, then maybe you're driving a car that routinely goes 200 miles an hour and it falls apart. I mean, that's gonna shake you up, and he was visibly shaken after that impact. And Stroll is still not the best driver on the grid. Now, I did go through and actually think through what does make a good, secondary driver, and so I did some rankings. So if we look at the primary driver, his points scored versus the secondary driver, and you do, the math there, you can come up with the percentage. So let's go through the list. Verstappen is 491 points on the season, where Perez is 240. If you do the math, for every 1 point that Verstappen scores, Perez is getting 49% of a point. With Hamilton, he's at 220 on the season. Russell is at 151. That's actually a pretty high percentage. For every 1 point Hamilton scores, Russell scores 68% of a point. Let's look at Norris. He's at 169, and who's his teammate? Piastri is at 87, so that's 51%. So for every point Norris scores, Piastri has answered with 51%. That is pretty dang good for a rookie. Over in Aston Martin land, Fernando Alonso is at 183, and Stroll is at 53. So that he answers with 29%. For every 1 point Alonso gets, Stroll gets 29% of the points, and over in Ferrari, and this is why I always say they're co-drivers. They're truly co-drivers because right now it's Sainz, the secondary driver, who's in the driver championship point lead with 183 points to Leclerc's 166. So Sainz, in my mind, is actually he's the better the better driver over there. I know Leclerc's had some bad luck, but statistically, he's in there. Okay, let's talk about the Perez crash. That was absolutely heartbreaking to see. I'm a fan of racing. I don't care that, you know, I'm more skewed toward Mercedes, although after Hamilton retires, I might switch over to McLaren. I mean, I'm a fan of Piastri. I want to see what he does. Anyway, you hate to see a crash, especially on the first lap. It was very reminiscent of Qatar. It was just, you know, just as heartbreaking for me to see, almost more heartbreaking to see Perez crash, because you know with Hamilton, he doesn't crash often. I think six crashes in his career have resulted in a DNF, so you know he's going to live to fight another day. He's got a strong contract. You know it's not his last one. It wasn't his home race. All of those factors were in play for Perez. His career is possibly almost at an end. This could be his last season. So a crash in Mexico means his last chance to race in his home country, and he crashed lap 1. I wish he would have at least made it to like lap 25. So that was more heartbreaking for me to see Perez crash in Mexico than to see Hamilton crash in Qatar.
I feel it was a racing incident. The gap was there, and obviously, as a driver, you take a risk going three cars into turn 1 with these white cars, and I took a risk that I paid a high price for it. But
will Perez ever race in Mexico again? He was gutted. This is not the way he wanted to possibly end his career. Hamilton he said still got maybe 5 years left. Who knows? If he gets his 8th championship next year, maybe he retires from there. And honestly, like I said in another video, that is what Russell should be aiming for. He should be doing everything he can to get Hamilton to win that last championship, so he can be the primary driver, like the real primary driver versus, you know, kind of the bootleg primary driver that he's trying to be right now. I think he's been humbled a little bit that Perez crashed. Terrible, terrible news for him. Lewis Hamilton P2, great result. He wasn't as close to Verstappen at the end as he was in Qatar, and that reflects on the fact that Mercedes was having some troubles with the car. But even troubles with the car, he was still second fastest, and that is significant. Now, we saw him kind of managing the tires toward the end of the race, you know, like the last 10, 15, 20 laps. You could see that his gap between, you know, himself and Verstappen was growing with every lap. It went from 7 seconds to 8 seconds to, I think, the end pace. He ended 13.8 seconds behind. So it's not 20 seconds, it's not 30 seconds like it's been in some of the worst races. 13 seconds behind is still a significant gap. There's no contest there. But if you look at the gap between him and Leclerc, Leclerc was 23 seconds. So essentially, Hamilton was free to manage tires. And I think he was doing that on purpose. I mean, if you know you're not going to catch the lead driver, you may as well manage the tires, and then in the last lap or two, you set the fastest lap when nobody can answer. And that's one of the things that makes Hamilton great, is he's patient. He knows what he wants to do. He knows how to maximize points, and he knows how to put on a good show. And he did that fastest lap on 42, I almost said year-old tires. I guess entire life of 42 lap-old tires, basically like a middle-aged man. So the fact that he was still able to do fastest lap on, well, not middle-aged, but those tires were senior citizens, and he still eked out the fastest lap. That's pretty awesome. That's a testament to the fact that the Mercedes car's come a long way. A testament to the fact that he is a 7.5 time, world champion, looking for, his full 8th. Ricciardo doing P7 in the AlphaTauri, I think Red Bull is putting, some of their upgrades into the AlphaTauri. They're leaving the main Red Bull cars alone and experimenting on the AlphaTauris, and the experimentations are going well. And also, Ricciardo is getting his confidence back. If Ricciardo performs over the next few races, I think that it will justify him, having earned a seat as the co-driver at the actual Red Bull team. And, they will gracefully tell Perez, see ya, we've got someone else. And I think he'd be a great counterbalance to Verstappen. Not only is he a great driver who can, help do a little bit of defensive driving, he's a great personality, and let's face it, Formula One is a business, it's entertainment, and if you have, good cop, bad cop, I mean, Ricciardo's always joking around, Verstappen is exceedingly serious. It'd be a great duo, it'll be something that's very appealing to fans, to racing fans, to people who are just in it for the show. It'll be a great show, and Red Bull desperately needs that. Even though they're winning, they're not necessarily the most popular team on the grid. There are other teams that have more personality, and I think, a little bit more popularity. That's just how it goes. That's business. What else was... So George, I think, I mentioned in last week's video that once a team locks in with their primary driver, that primary driver is feeling the car, man, they protect that primary driver status, and you can tell. George got P6, which in, Mercedes terms was basically nowhere to be found. But I think that's kind of, it's almost what you hope for. I would have hoped to see George honestly a little bit higher in the points, but given who he was up against, I mean, it's about right. It's about right. He's not on the level of Hamilton or Verstappen. He's just not. He's not there yet. He will be outclassed by them if they're both, driving well. Even Perez, I think, is probably a little bit better, of a driver. Piastri is getting there, and the stats are there. Russell is a great driver. Like I said, he's scoring 68% for every point that Hamilton is. That is an outstanding stat. But in terms of overall race pace, there is a little bit more, maturing for him to do before he's going to be at the world champion level. I think that he can get there, but he's going to have some stiff competition, especially as Piastri matures. So, all in all, besides the Perez crash, Hamilton P2, and the Ricciardo, very strong finish, it was just overall good racing, nothing too scandalous, which is actually really nice to see in Formula One. And I think that kind of rounds out my analysis. We're in for a great 2024 season. The next few races are going to be interesting. If Mercedes can continue to show strength, I think that they are going to be a competitive car. And McLaren is going to be a competitive team, and also Ferrari. So we're going to be in for a good season in 2024. I think that's all I'm going to cover in the Monday video. I'm going to save some of my commentary for different car shows for maybe midweek. I will say I'm not exactly sure what's going on with JDM right now, but I hope that the concepts that they brought to the table were only due to the fact that it was a mobility show and not exactly what they want to bring to the table for production, because I think some of the cars were hideous, and I think that the drivetrains were unimaginative, save for Mazda and the iconic SP. At least they did put that rotary generator in there to save some weight and provide some additional range for an electric drivetrain. It had its potential to be more interesting. I think, the all-electric Prelude, the all-electric MR2, they just kind of phoned it in. It's kind of boring. All the comments were negative for the cars, and they looked a little bit too futuristic. I mean, I think they're the kind of renders that look good on a computer screen, but would never look good in a parking lot. And you have to kind of pass the parking lot test. Would this look amazing? Would it integrate with the rest of the world, which is analog? Would these cars fit in? I'm not convinced that they will. I'll probably make a video about that, or at least put a little more thought into the cars that I saw, and hopefully Japanese manufacturers can redeem themselves. I'll try to find out a little bit more about what was behind that particular car show and why everything was electric, especially when the vehicle like the new MR2 that was supposed to have a Suzuki 3-cylinder car with a manual transmission, light hybridization, and that's actually a car that's something I would buy. I would. An all-electric MR2 though, it's gonna be a brick in like 10-15 years, and that's not really what I'm looking for. That's it. Thanks for tuning in. That's the Monday video. I hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I will see you later. I'm out.